whom I remember well as a high school student. And already then she showed all the qualities needed to be an effective moderator. So I'm sure you'll find that out right now. Anne?
I'm not sure I want to take that as a compliment because a lot of my report cards said I talk too much. So I'm not sure that's a good thing, but thank you. I'll take it. I'll take it. So thanks all for joining us today. We have a great group of panelists. As Mr. Rotenbroeker said, we have panelists spanning from the 70s all the way through the 2000s. I fall somewhere in the middle. I am a class of 85 alum. I have some 85 fellow graduates with me, so happy to see their faces. And thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules. You guys are a dynamic, interesting crew, and it's been a great time this week getting to know you in advance of today's symposium. I attended, after a stint in public school, just real quickly, I started at the Waldorf School in 7th grade. I graduated in 12th grade, so from 79 to 85. Had a great ride, and it's been great staying in touch with the school ever since. And I'm so looking forward to hearing all of your stories. But before we get into any of our questions, I do want to throw it out to each one of the panelists. In real briefly, tell us your name, tell us when you graduated from Waldorf, your time at Waldorf, and tell us what you're doing real quickly today. So let's start with Ayana.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I hope you can all hear me okay. It's wonderful to be with you all. Really exciting to see my classmates, Patrick and Danielle. Hi, guys. It's been a while. So I'm class of 94. I was there for 10 years. I started in 2nd grade. So not quite a lifer, but kind of, I would tell people I was just to fit in. And I have 2 younger brothers who also went to Waldorf. The youngest of which is a lifer. And so our family is very steeped in Waldorf education and had an amazing time at the Garden City School. After law school, I traveled and worked abroad a bit. I went to law school at Columbia Law School, and my career has been mostly in real estate law, affordable housing law in particular, and affordable housing transactions, city planning, and economic development.
Wonderful.
With you all.
Thank you, Ayana. How about you, Chris? Chris Smalley. I see you on my right side of my screen.
Hey everyone, great to be with you this morning. I am a lifer. I graduated in 2007 and started in the 3-year-old program. So I got 15 great years of Waldorf education. Since then, I have spent my career primarily in finance with some detours into private equity and technology, and have an MBA from Michigan, have lived all over the country, and I'm thrilled to be finally back in New York, albeit not at the school quite yet, but hopefully next year.
Lovely. Thank you, Chris. How about you, Andrea? Do I see you? I think I see you. Andrea Conti, my classmate.
Hi everybody. Nice to see everyone this morning. My name's Andrea. I started Waldorf in the kindergarten and went through the 7th grade. My entire family went to the Waldorf school. Even though I didn't graduate in 85 at Waldorf, I have always considered myself a Waldorfian. It's kind of in me forever and ever. So it's great to be a part of this panel. I hope to help all you beautiful up and coming graduates, and congratulations. And you're in a beautiful school. Very blessed to have gone to Waldorf school.
Thank you, Ms. Conti. How about you, Bob Gold?
Morning, everyone, from California, Los Angeles. I graduated way back in 1973.
You are brave.
I know. And I am still in touch with many of my classmates. This is a lifetime community that you become a part of. So everyone that you hang out with, you're going to hang out with them for life. So get used to it. Today, I have a public relations and marketing agency. My oldest son went to high mowing, and it has been a life-changing experience being part of Waldorf. It opens us up. Quick fact that no one knows, when I was in high school, I joined in 10th grade, and my name as a junior became Basic Philosophy, because everything was basically. And I am
That was your verbal crutch. Gotcha. All right, Seth, let's stay on the West Coast. Let's hear from you real quick.
Hi there, everyone. Good morning. Seth Skolnick, class of '85. I think I probably rolled into the school when Bob was rolling out. So I was there for 14 years. I went off to Dartmouth College after Waldorf, eventually grabbed an MBA at Stanford, and I've been working in the media technology space most of my run, as I think we'll speak about a bit. So thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Thanks, Seth. How about you, Dr. Dan Eisenschmidt?
Well, hello, everybody. It's good to be here. I started Waldorf in second grade with Miss Berlin, who was my classroom teacher through 8th grade. Graduated in '78 and eventually went on to get a PhD from University of Maryland, Baltimore in forensic toxicology, which is where I am in my career right now, working for a laboratory outside of Philadelphia, NMS Labs, although I'm working remotely from Detroit, Michigan. And I've been enjoying the field that I've been in all my life, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about that later on in the breakout sessions.
Wonderful. I love Detroit. Great city. How about you, Dr. Sciummo?
Hi, I'm Kristen Sciummo. I graduated in 1989, and I also am a lifer. I started in first grade with Mr. O'Donoghue and went all the way through. I am practicing as a psychologist now. I teach. I'm a faculty member at Long Island University, where I've been for quite a long time now, and have a private practice as well. And very much look forward to talking to everyone more about that.
Thank you, Doctor. How about you, Julie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Marisol. I graduated in 2009. I was at the school for nursery and kindergarten, and then left and came back for 8th grade through 12th grade. After graduating, I went to NYU for food studies, and I worked in the food industry for a bit, but transferred over to finance, and now I work as an actuarial assistant at New York Life, so still based in New York.
Thanks, Julie. And now for my class of '94, last but not least, Danielle.
Hi, all. I'm Danielle Colding. I graduated '94 with some of my other classmates here. After Waldorf, I'm a lifer, so kindergarten through 12th grade. I went to Stanford University after that. I taught, I was a dancer, I've done many things. And then I went to design school for interior design, which is what I'm currently doing.
And last but certainly not least, Patrick.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Patrick Henkin, class of '94. I went to Waldorf 6 through 12. I too, like my fellow designer and classmate Danielle, went through many turns sort of after college, but I am a residential interior designer and a realtor and do a little bit of coaching training as well. And happy to be here this morning.
Okay, thanks, panelists. I appreciate it. So let's get going. We've got a lot to cover, and my first victim is Danielle, our class of 1994. Danielle, when you and I got to chat a bit this week, I was really interested in your journey from Waldorf to the present. And, you know, I think you mentioned that it wasn't necessarily something that you originally started out thinking you were going to do. And how did you get to where you are today?
So I think the thing about Waldorf that was really instilled in me was really staying true to my path and my journey. And that sort of led me through a fairly circuitous route. I did not know interior design really as a profession back when I graduated high school, and really didn't have that in mind. So after high school, I went to Stanford, as I mentioned, and I was lucky enough to study anthropology and African American studies. And I think I also approached my college time from the perspective of studying something I was really interested in. I didn't have sort of an end goal of a career, and I feel pretty lucky to have had that experience. From there, I taught school for 2 years. I taught first grade in East Oakland, while I also was a professional dancer. So I've always been a creative. I've always sort of followed my heart, I think, versus following the money, which is sort of so common now. And at the end of sort of 4 years of sort of cobbling together a career of dance and teaching, I sort of reflected and said, you know, what is next for me? And I reviewed sort of the things that I was naturally good at, and then the things that I felt really passionate about. And I married these ideas of being a problem solver with being a creative. And what would sort of get me up in the morning every day with some level of excitement and passion. And after some time reflecting, I came up with interior design as sort of the perfect melding of the things that I loved and my sort of natural abilities. And so I would say it certainly wasn't a straight path, but the thing that has been consistent is really following my heart and my journey and being open to what comes next.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Danielle. You know, Seth, when I met you way back in 7th grade, about 300 years ago, I felt like when I met you, you knew exactly what you wanted to do at the age of 12. Was I right about that? And did you end up where I thought you would end up?
Wow, you were very hopeful, I suppose. I had absolutely not. I had no idea then what I thought I'd want to do, and I probably still don't know what I want to do. So
work in progress.
Yeah, I suppose I created a perception. Yeah, as I said earlier, I've worked in the media technology space, but I'd say that's been more of a reflection of finding my way just through both serendipity and ultimately a focus on what I enjoy doing or what I perceived would not come across to me as work. I'm probably inherently lazy, so I wanted to find something that that wasn't too taxing on my system. So let me back up and try to put that in context. Out of Waldorf, I didn't sit back and give a heck of a lot of thought to what I wanted to do or what a career path would be. I think I just looked at the next decision in front of me, made what I thought was the best one at the time, and then proceeded from there. So the notion of, you know, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to study to be a doctor, a lawyer, or what have you, that wasn't in my mindset. At Dartmouth, I was fortunate to be able to work at some student-run radio stations that were actually commercial radio stations. And to me, that was a lot of fun. It was a continuation of a love for media. That's probably where your impression came from, because maybe I stood out at Waldorf as speaking a little too much about the TV I had watched the night before or something I'd heard
That's
on
our secret.
Yeah. So, you know, that didn't exactly go over that well at the school, I suppose. I did. I enjoyed media as a child. My parents didn't disallow it as much, although I do recall they'd come home from parent-teacher conferences and take our little black and white TV and put it in the closet after the feedback they received from the teachers. That lasted about a day, so we were good there. But no, let's get to the main track. I enjoyed media. I could probably reveal now with a safe amount of time and distance that in 12th grade, I do recall ducking into the dark room in the high school and listening to Howard Stern at about 2 in the afternoon when he came on. But, you know, I still got my work done mostly. So at Dartmouth, I was in media as an activity while I was in school. But at the end of that run, it was time to get a job. I was offered an opportunity at what was then called Anderson Consulting, now known as Accenture, ultimately an information systems oriented management consulting firm. So I was flattered. They wanted to pay me money and bring me to New York and allow me to do things with adults and wear a tie. So I tried that. And I think within a few weeks of that job back in '89, I knew that wasn't for me. It didn't mean I jumped out of there immediately, but it started to help me figure out what I thought I'd enjoy doing more than what I was doing there. I did well. I knew how to play the game, but it wasn't anything all that exciting to me. And I think as you go through your career, if you're truly looking for that which it inspires you, it's like you're sculpting a swan out of ice, and you have to figure out what to chip away from that block of ice in order to find the swan. So I think my first step toward the swan was realizing I didn't enjoy what I was doing in that first job out of school.
Yeah.
So from there, I looked for a pivot point. I said, well, I enjoy media. Maybe I can jump in here or there, maybe start ground floor somewhere and work my way back up. But I took the easier way out, which was let me leverage a master's degree and make that a platform from which I can then find my next thing. So I applied to business schools. I was fortunate that I was given an opportunity to go out to Stanford and go on into their program. And that decision obviously became life impacting. And it's not one I thought about that much at the time, but obviously moving 3,000 miles away from my family, planting myself in another side of the country where there would be other opportunities would naturally lead to the potential for maybe not coming back 24 months later as I had promised my parents. And now we're talking 26, 27.
21 years. Okay. And here we are today.
So trying to now make what's not a short story short. I was fortunate in that I was at Stanford in Silicon Valley at the time when the web emerged, when the internet came onto the scene. So I involved myself in those very early days with activities, including doing a consulting job where I helped build the very first movie website. That led to a continued engagement with that company, Viacom, which owned Paramount Pictures, which led to a, hey, why don't you move down to LA and help us form a digital division? So I did that. And for the next 10 years, I helped run the media technology division at Paramount. That led to a startup I tried for a few years. That led to 7 years at Technicolor, running corporate investments and ventures and new businesses. And for the last 4 years, it's had me in more of the entrepreneurial mode in a small startup doing other things in media and technology. So those details aren't all that important. I think what covers all that is that I learned to figure out the things I enjoyed doing, the areas of business I wanted to become engaged with, and I didn't pursue them all that specifically. I simply found myself with new opportunities as a result of presumably doing a decent job, presumably being decent to people I worked with, which led to all these serendipitous opportunities that took me to my next step. So I've not applied for a job in 20-something, 30-something years, but I've just found my way. And so maybe I consider myself kind of floating through a career that I enjoy, keeps the lights on, feeds my kids, and who knows where it takes me next. It may take me in a whole different direction in the coming years.
Bravo to that. You've kept it moving, and I appreciate it. And that's quite a busy 27 years. I'm feeling a little sloth-like next to that. But since it's a cold and rainy day today in New York, let's stay on sunny LA, West Coast, and let me turn to Bob Gold. That was my cue to you, Bob.
Yes.
And I want to move to our another question, slightly different focus, and you know, how has Waldorf prepared you for where you are today? You know, tell us some about the challenges that you faced and how, if at all, you know, Waldorf gave you the tools to meet those challenges.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. You know, I came in 10th grade. I had been bullied in junior high. I just didn't fit in. I was a professional child actor, and there was jealousies that were created by that. It was a weird place. And I came in 10th grade, and I think everyone has a story about discovering Waldorf. It wasn't like you got a brochure in the mail and went there. And I was immediately accepted. I was immediately embraced by fellow students. I became the fourth musketeer for 3 other guys that were there. And I was heard. I was encouraged to be curious about everything in the world and to be willing to challenge and do things I would never have done anywhere else, from eurythmy to pottery and, you know, doing their string designs and, you know, carving out of soapstone and going to Glenbrook. As I said to Anne, I still make the same coleslaw recipe with caraway that I learned at Glenbrook. So Waldorf is, I like to describe it back then that there was a hurricane of change going on in the world. And today there's certainly a hurricane of change from Black Lives Matters and the political environment and the crashing economy. And Waldorf is the eye of the hurricane. It remains calm, it remains safe, it remains a place where we can be loved and appreciated, not for what we want to be or what people think we ought to do, but for who we are. And if we can accept that, then everything flows from it and is great. So that's my story.
Thank you, Bob. You know, it's funny, in talking to you all, as much as the school has evolved and changed over time, we all share that core of what Waldorf education means to us. We have a lot of common strands. I want to send it over to Patrick. Patrick had a similar transition from public school, a little bit earlier than yours, Bob. I guess Patrick joined us in 6th grade, right? So tell us about how Waldorf education impacted what you decided to do today in the real estate and interior design worlds.
Well, I think I would piggyback off of what Bob said. There was a freedom to be curious and a freedom to explore. So, you know, I guess it's funny because I originally went away to college as a freshman as an architecture student, so kind of closely related to interior design, but I was not ready for that and just wasn't ready for any of that at the moment at 18. So I explored many different things and tried dozens of careers. And it's funny, I was actually catering and like in the kitchen doing, like I was doing my own thing, cooking, and met a woman who was an interior designer who I sort of was telling my story, and it related back very quickly. And I ended up starting to work for her, is like how I sort of circled back. But as it relates to a creative field and an entrepreneurial field, being free to explore and, you know, look at things through a different lens is how it really lends itself to this career, and being able to problem solve and be a yes to every situation, which is really what we do in design.
I think you should put that on a t-shirt because you mentioned it today and I loved it. So Julie, let me shift over to you because I want to make sure we all hear from our wonderful panelists. Julie, you told me that the one thing you remembered about Waldorf is how much the teachers care. And I shared that with you because we have the benefit of having teachers who really know us and who really take the time and care about who we are and who we want to be. And, you know, you told me that your teachers had you figured out perhaps before you figured it out. So tell us about that. Tell us about how, you know, what you did at Waldorf and your teachers ultimately ended up influencing where you are today as an actuary at New York Life.
Sure. So when I first graduated, I went to NYU and I went for food studies, and I was working in the food industry. Decided to leave after a few years, but like Danielle, my route to where I am has been a bit circuitous, and it's exactly how I describe it. I ended up going back to school 2 more times. And while I was doing that, I was working at the school. I spent a year actually living and working at Glenbrook as well. So I was fortunate to work with, you know, many of the teachers who the students still have as teachers and who are my teachers as well. And I very distinctly remember a conversation I had with Mrs. Rapalt, who's, you know, I went back to school and got a math degree. And she said, Julie, we all knew you were going to go into math. We just didn't say anything when you went, you know, decided to go into the food industry instead, but we knew you'd come back to it. And having that, you know, warmth and community of my teachers knew me so well, and I definitely felt that, but I was never pushed into a box or told, maybe this is what you should do instead, which I had to take my own path. And it's, you know, gotten me where I am now, which I'm very thankful for. But there's definitely, you know, a care to let me take that path, which I just so appreciate.
Thank you. Thank you. Chris, when you and I spoke, you know, you talked about how you took, or you're perhaps in a profession that's not the traditional Waldorf profession, and whatever that means, because just look at this panel and look at all the diverse fields we cover. So I don't even know if there is a typical Waldorf path, given our diverse backgrounds and what we're bringing to the table today. But tell us how, you know, Waldorf impacted what you're doing today, if at all, and make that link for us if there is such a link.
Sure. So I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head with me, and that I am in many ways the Waldorf student who wasn't and should never have been. I was the guy who in 9th grade was like, I want to make a lot of money, I want to be rich, and I'm going to plot my career path very granularly to achieve that. And I was all about the kind of math and social studies, the things that I thought were going to help me to understand the economy and understand how the world works, that would allow me to be, you know, kind of successful in the ways that I had defined success. And I could not have cared less about the arts, and I was quite bad at them, but nevertheless, at Waldorf, you still have to do them to graduate. And I ended up getting really involved in a lot of the school plays and performance arts. And if you had told me then that they would play a part in my career, I would have said, haha, good joke, now let's like play lacrosse or whatever. Yeah. But as I kind of look back at my career now, I think the differentiator, the place where I've been incrementally better than my peers that have allowed me to advance faster, is presentation skills and the comfortability to stand in front of a very large audience, a very senior audience, far above my pay grade at pretty much every stage, and to speak thoughtfully, cogently, and kind of precisely. And there's no way that I think I could have reach that level of comfortability if it wasn't for the performance art and needing to stand up and recite Mr. Kritos will remember the disaster of "Oh Captain, My Captain" in 11th grade. And I think after that fail, I was never going to stand up in front of an audience and not do well. So those experiences really played a part in my ability to communicate, I think, and that was really helpful in my career.
Little did we know how that was going to kick in later on in life, right? How about now? Let's in fact, now you spoke about being in front of folks. We have an actress on our panel, and Andrea, I want to ask you. You know, our panelists have talked about the challenges they face personally. Talk to me about how world challenges like the virus has impacted you as an actress, and how have you met those challenges, and how do you think your Waldorf education has given you the tools to do so?
I'm not sure if it's just specifically virus related. Hi, everyone. I have always lived in a land of make-believe, you know, since kindergarten. So it's always reinventing yourself. And when you're an artist, and I have a lot to thank Waldorf for that, for following that path, what's happening in the world right now, and especially in my industry, is there's constant changing. And it's not just the virus, it's diversity and it's acceptance, which is a beautiful thing for actors with disabilities, which I've always felt are not disabilities, they're special abilities, because everyone's completely unique. It's changing. Technology, Seth, I mean, you can attest to this, and I loved your analogy of the swan and chipping away. I was always the weird little duck. So I'm still working on that. You see behind me, in the ever-changing world of my industry, I've learned how to self-tape because live in person is kind of obsolete. There's so much fear in the world right now about the virus and all these other elements that are coming into play. So the ability to think on your feet, the ability to learn and grow, and you're constantly changing. And my industry, there are no rules. They're being created as you go along. So it's adapting to the situation, basically, if that answers your question, Anne.
It does, thank you. And I love your studio, by the way, it looks terrific. We could all take a page from your book.
Well, you know, fresh lavender from my garden, which was only in existence because of my Waldorf education.
There's the Waldorf link. Thank you very much. Ayana, I'd like to hear from you. Tell us about how you've met some challenges and how Waldorf has impacted that.
Sure. Much like Andrea, there were some significant changes in the real estate market when I decided to, with my husband, begin a real estate investment business. So I had been on a really exciting project in economic and development and city planning, which I'm really proud of, and felt like it was the next step for me a few years ago to sort of go out on my own. And everything was looking really great for that. And then just sort of certain laws in relation to the type of real estate work we were doing suddenly changed, and the market totally changed, and sort of the plans kind of went out the window. And so that was, you know, a little daunting. And how do you deal with a big change like that and the plans that you have? So that was just in my particular industry. And then COVID hit, which really put everything into like a whole world of uncertainty that we continue to live with. So, you know, thinking about answering this question and how Waldorf, sort of the education and experience shaped me to be able to deal with these challenges, I think it's just that, kind of as Chris was saying, you both have and Patrick, you have the freedom at Waldorf to do and be who you are, but you're also forced to do things that you might not feel comfortable doing. But I think in that, I've always felt like Waldorf helped me to develop a strong sense of confidence about my ability to manage situations or start things or persevere through things that I might not be comfortable doing or think that I can do or know anything about. But having had the experience of having to do so many different things, whether I was good at them or not, and just do your best and believe in yourself, and that as long as you do your best and and be as professional as you can be in doing that, that is going to be recognized. And it's also going to help you just to think and get through and be creative with what you can do when you're faced with challenges. So I really thank Waldorf a lot for that. But also, another thing I would say is that relationships are really important. And I think that the importance of them a lot for me was influenced by my experience at Waldorf. I mean, I may not have seen Patrick and Danielle for a really long time, but like seeing your faces, I'm just running through like the reel of all the memories. And know that, you know, if we ran into each other on the street, it'd be like a 2-hour-long conversation. And that's also just, yeah, I mean, and that's true for, you know, teachers that I have kept in touch with, and that, you know, there's other students from other classes that I've run into over the years. And that's really important to know how important like relationships and connections are with people, because in your professional world, and I would say it starts now with your teachers at Waldorf, but when you're in college, when you go out into the workforce, my parents, you know, very much instilled in me. I think Waldorf very much instilled manners, right? But I have been shocked at my, you know, putting my best foot forward in work situations and at school, being polite and respectful to people, following up with thank you notes, and then just staying in touch with folks over the years. I have come back to people I met in my first job because something that I did later on, I thought maybe they would have some advice on, and I can come back and talk to those same people. And you wouldn't sort of believe that starting off, but it is incredibly helpful, particularly if you are sort of steering your way through a career that maybe has a couple of different turns and you need advice along the way, or you remember somebody who you may have worked with who's now doing the thing that you're interested in doing. So I think those are pretty important values and experiences I got from Waldorf.
Keep those doors open.
Yeah.
So I'd like to shift to our doctors on the panel, because I do want to hear from them real quickly. Dr. Eisenschmidt, you're in forensics and very interesting field. And tell us how if you could give us some advice for our future graduates, how they can face challenges of unexpected events. We heard about, you know, the changes in the real estate laws. We've heard about COVID and how it impacts different industries. Tell us how in your world, you know, you met the challenges, and what advice could you give the grads in meeting those challenges?
Well, fortunately for the laboratory that I'm working with right now, which is a laboratory based out of near suburban Philadelphia, the lab, I joined them back in 2011 after leaving the medical examiner's office in Detroit, Michigan, where I was the chief toxicologist. And I joined this lab because we actually outsourced our toxicology work to them. And as it turned out, the laboratory was completely paperless. So any of the data review that I was able to do, I could do remotely. And that has become particularly useful currently in the pandemic situation that we're in. I certainly miss the opportunity to work with my colleagues and be on site with them from time to time. I used to travel to Philadelphia for a week a month and really enjoyed that. But you know, times have changed, and I think, you know, one of the things that we can get out of Waldorf is Waldorf taught us how to think in difficult times, and you know, I think this is a unique opportunity. I think for high school students now, I think one of the things to remember is you don't need to know everything in high school. You'll learn it over time. I actually came across a quote that I really liked. It was in a book written by Ray Johnston called The Hope Quotient. And I said, well, this is an interesting quote because it's so Waldorfian sounding. And it's thriving people thrive for one reason. They commit to things that produce inner strength and hope. And I think that's what we have to have at this time is hope. And I think that's pulled us through a lot and will continue to do so.
Amen. Amen. Dr. Sciummo, I know you're in the, you know, the area of counseling in the school context and clinical mental health counseling in your, as a professor and in your private practice. Do you have some words of advice for us to how to meet the challenges in a healthy and a positive way?
Well, I would say that to briefly reiterate what the other speakers have said, I also agree that Waldorf provided a fundamental foundation for all of us with respect to, oh gosh, problem solving, creativity, and the development of grit and resilience, right? Through all the examples that were mentioned, right? I myself was not particularly artistic. I still have my squirrel that I made out of the soapstone, and he looks to be on steroids, but I love him. He's in my home nonetheless. And I think that that foundation is so critical, and we're seeing that now. And of course, there have been many changes in my profession, some COVID related in terms of how it work. I'm doing much more work like this, right? Over Zoom, over platforms, people not necessarily yet all comfortable coming back in face to face. And there's creativity in that and a positive in that, as well as people grieving a loss in that too, right? Because the connection is different, the human interaction is a bit different. I think also socially, COVID has brought to the fore a lot of what I think a lot of us have known, you know, in terms of disparities in care in my industry, in terms of access to care, access to quality of care. And I find myself being more dogged or more determined in terms of working with community-based resources to really help, you know, adolescents and young adults gain access to needed mental health care. Because unfortunately we are seeing a rise in depression, a rise in, you know, some pretty negative and troubling symptoms among adolescents, in part because of the isolation and the loneliness that COVID has put on all of us. And I think that coming from a place like Waldorf, we have the true privilege, right, of understanding through experiences over and over again over the years that we all have creativity and resilience in us, and that just has to be honed and developed. And that's something that I bear in mind a lot in working with people, whether as students or as clients, to help them realize you have that in you. And yes, things are difficult right now. There's no question, but we'll figure out how to creatively bring that forward.
Well, doctor, you might be getting a call from me.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going into the lightning round. I'm going to shift gears because we literally have a minute. And if you like game shows, stay with me on this. I'm going to ask each one of you to give me a couple of words of advice, if you can do it. Are you ready for me? And I'm going to start with Chris. A couple words of advice for our students.
Sure. I think if I were in your shoes and wanted to know one thing that I didn't, it's that nothing goes straight to heaven. Your career is going to have ups and downs. I think Seth said it really nicely earlier on. Just keep making the right decision over and over and over. Some of them are not going to pan out. Don't panic. Just get up the next day, do it again, keep making the right decisions, and overall you're going to have a positive trend line. Beautiful.
Danielle.
He stole my answer. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I think it can't be overstated. You don't need to know where you're going right now. The important thing is to be true to the next step. I think, that's the reality. We're not all sort of coming out at 18 really knowing what we're doing. I mean, I'm at 44 still figuring it out. And just embracing the next right thing.
Andrea.
Yeah. My favorite one, it's don't trade your authenticity for approval.
Love that. Another t-shirt. Boom.
And there is one more.
Go ahead.
Enjoy being a work in progress, because we're constantly a work in progress, constantly, in every stage of your life, in your teens, in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s. You're constantly growing and changing, and the world is growing and changing. So be true to yourself. There's a lot of people out there that are wonderful, and find your tribe. Find your tribe.
Thank you. How about you, Bob?
I think that Nike has brainwashed most of us to say, just do it. That's their slogan. Like, do it yourself. But in fact, I believe that true leadership, that the act of a leader is someone who sets an agenda and asks for help. Help me do this. And my advice is, I hope each of you as students at Waldorf practice asking for help, and thereby demonstrating your leadership.
Thank you, Bob. Couple of words from you, Julie.
Sorry. Yeah, sure. So I think my biggest thing is keep learning. Just always keep learning and exploring new things. I started in the food industry. I work in finance. They're not very related. But, if you keep learning and keep exploring new things, you're going to end up in the right place.
How about you, Patrick?
I'm going to go with something that was actually advice given to me the night of our high school graduation, actually from Danielle's mother. Better to regret that you tried something that you didn't try at all. So get out there and keep trying stuff, and you will. We're all a work in progress. You're going to get there.
Thank you. Seth, real fast.
Similar to Patrick, we're good at binging Netflix. Binge life. Take risks, stretch, try things you're afraid of. That's how you're going to find your passion. That's how you're going to carve your swan.
Thank you. I got to get my swan out. How about you, Dr. Sciummo? A couple of words.
Oh my gosh. Similar to what has been said, I think life is absolutely a journey. Enjoy it, take risks, ask for help, and you will find your tribe. What I would add to that is sometimes the tribe isn't necessarily always so obvious at the stage of life, right? We see what is put out there, but you will find your tribe, and they will be there for you along for the whole ride, I'm sure.
Thank you. Dr. Dan?
I would say that, I think Waldorf has given everybody a great toolbox, and you may not know what all the tools are for, but you have them with you, and all of a sudden you'll find a reason to use them. And those are the things that will just come in at the right time and help you forge ahead when you need to.
Thank you. And Ayana, I don't see your box, but finish it out for us real quick.
Yeah, no, I'm here. So
Thanks.
asking questions of people in your life and adults that you meet, again, I think is really important because everybody has had different paths. And I think today there's so many different types of career paths. I mean, I'm, trying to sort of describe to my kids things that exist now that didn't exist when I was a kid. You have to, I think, try to really figure out what it is you want, your purpose, what you want to accomplish in life. And maybe that, changes over time, but then don't be afraid to talk to people about that, because you'd be so surprised where you can get advice from about things you may not have ever thought of that might be possible for you and be exactly what it is you want to pursue. And then to, keep connections with people because they come back in and out of your life, and you'd be surprised how helpful that can be, and in forging your network as well.
Including all of us on this wonderful panel.
Absolutely.
Panelists, thank you so much. I really appreciate your wonderful, wonderful insight. I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Rotenbucher, and because I know students have to be dismissed, and take it away, Roland.
Yes, so once again, thank you to all of you. You've really shown how the child is the father of the man, the mother of the woman, the adult that you've become really had its start in Waldorf. So thank you so much for all your kind words and words of wisdom. So students can return to, I think we're having a half-hour lunch before we start the breakout sessions now. And I want to thank everyone else who's on the call for your attention and caring to Zoom in this morning. So be well till next year's Alumni Symposium.
So I think we're going to have a session for parents. Is that right? So just students are going to be dismissed at this point. And Samantha, I think we have some questions for our prospective parents.
Yep, so please use your blue hands on the Zoom if you have any questions for our alum, and we will answer them as they come in. We have a...
Do we have any questions for any of our panelists from our perspectives?
There's a raised hand.
Mocha Brown has a question.
Thank you. Mocha, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I got put into a breakout room a little early. Do we have any questions? Have we started? I don't see any blue hands.
I think
Mocha Brown just had one.
If you do have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead.
I had asked Bob a question in the chat separately, if he could respond to that. I don't know if he saw it or not.
Yes, and I'm typing away right now.
You know what, Bob? Share the question if that's okay, Mocha. Is it okay if I share the question? And then, Bob, tell us what you were.
Yeah, so Mocha writes, being the eldest alumni of the school, do you feel the Waldorf School has always had an openness to embracing cultural differences and diversity with the student population? So in my limited experience, and it is limited, from a long time ago and what's there, I think the school has always done its best to recruit students from a wide swath of what's there. But in 1974-75, I decided I wanted to go spend an academic year in Israel. And Mr. Gardner was the headmaster of the school at that time. And he said, Bob, I'm so surprised at you trying to get in touch with your Jewish roots, having spent so much time invested in Waldorf. You should know that being Jewish is the roots of of our past, and we are heading up towards being the rose, and you should go and be the rose and not go to Israel. And that answer convinced me it was more important than ever to go to Israel. So, so I mean, I think we're all human. I really believe that Waldorf does its best to try. And what we've learned in this past year is the blindsidedness of our own discriminations and biases that pop out unintentionally and probably come out in some aspect in the school too, Mocha. I don't know if that answers your question, but if you see something, say something.
No, that's very good. My daughter currently goes to, I'm of Black nationality, of America. My daughter currently goes to a Greek Orthodox school, which is very, very different than anything I've culturally grew up with. But I grew up with a very pretty diverse culture of people in the school that I went to. And so I wanted that same experience for my child, to be able to have that ability to branch out across and amongst everyone, and to know and understand the teachings of everybody's family upbringing is very different, and to be respectful and be regarding of everyone, not just, you know, people who we are normally used to being around. So thank you for your response. And if anyone else has any response to that, that would be helpful as well.
We do have another question from Matthias Grez, if you want to go ahead and answer your question.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I just have a quick question. We're in the process of applying for the school. I have a youngster, but I just had a question regarding the transition from the Waldorf school into the normal academia and, you know, going to college and whatnot. I'd love to hear the experience from the panelists about how difficult or how easy it was for you to transition into the normal academia. Thank you.
I could answer that, I think, if that's okay. I think actually my answer may encompass the two questions that we've had so far. When I started Waldorf, I was, as a first grader, I was young as well. And I will share with all of the panelists as well as parents listening that I have significant visual issues that I was born with, and they have progressed over the years, but were nonetheless significant as a child. And when my parents were finding schooling for me, you know, this was also a long time ago now. This was in the 70s, and there was not the understanding that there is now. And what my parents came across first was, unfortunately, do not expect anything of your child, right? Your child is bright, but your child has significant disabilities, right? Was the term at the time. So she will be lovely, she is smart, but you cannot expect much. Now, luckily for me, my family and my mother probably most specifically said that that's not going to happen, right? I understand the challenges, but this philosophy is not going to work. And somehow, like everyone said, I should ask her actually how she found Waldorf, because certainly in 1976, there were not lots of brochures floating around. But in my experience over those 12 years, right, I learned differently. I had to learn differently. I go about doing things differently day to day. I still do, and I've still accommodated over the years. And Waldorf was a place that embraced that, right? I wasn't just accepted. It was more than that. It was, all right, this is what your needs are, and you're still going to do all the shading and geometry, and you're still going to carve the soapstone that I keep raising today, and I don't know why, right? And you're going to do all these things. And so there is in the philosophy, I think, a tremendous acceptance, and not even just acceptance. I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for, but really building up of people, you know, regardless of their life experiences, their cultural backgrounds, their needs. And so from a diversity standpoint, I think that, you know, I've seen in my life that a lot of people can unfortunately talk about it well at a distance, right? But it can be a different circumstance when the people are right in front of you. And I would say that Waldorf does a really good job, not just talking the talk, but really working with who is right in front of them and embracing them. And then in terms of transition to university, I went from a class of 22. I made a one-year stop at Boston College, which is big. It was not the place for me, and then jumped to Cornell, which is huge. And it was fine. And there was all the concerns that I'm sure you have as a father, like, oh my gosh, going from 30 tops, right, to a class of 1,000. And it was fine. And I think part of the reason it was fine was because of the education I had. You know, I was able to move around and relate to all different kinds of people and figure out, how do I get myself across this huge campus by memorizing where different trees and rocks and things were, because I can't read signs, right? So the transition will be fine. You know, whatever the right school is for your son or daughter, when it's time to go to college, they will transition fine.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Can I just address the
I
initial?
was just going to give it to you, Danielle.
Perfect. So my experience at Waldorf, for one, our class was pretty diverse. I mean, 3 of us on this panel are Black. And we were in school together all the way up, and we had other kids of color or biracial kids in our class the whole time. It wasn't until my senior year that I had any idea that as a girl and as a girl of color, I wasn't supposed to be smart. I just thought I was supposed to be one of the smartest kids. And I never, ever got that message. And when I went to Stanford, it was pretty stark. The academics were fine, to answer your question. I did very well there. And had no problem transitioning. I think Waldorf does teach you how to think, which is crucial, right? No matter where you go. But the racial aspect was really shocking to me. My freshman year was told I had to make a choice. Are you going to be part of the Black community, or are you going to be part of basically the larger white community and be sort of one of, you know, sort of one person of color? And I was pretty shocked by that because, you know, I grew up in Queens. I mean, I had a very multiracial experience, but I had never been confronted with that kind of necessity to choose before. And I also never really experienced people expecting less of me because of what I looked like. I had just, that was the transition that was a bit more shocking to me than anything academic. And I realize now how rare that is in our current environment. I think that sort of messaging of lower expectations for particularly Black girls is prevalent. And I have to say, and I don't know if Ayana can speak to this too, I don't have any memories of getting that messaging. I was expected to be smart. I was expected to do well. And I realize now what a blessing that was, because that sort of messaging just wasn't given to me. So I hope that answers part of that question, because I think it's a pretty exceptional.
I think, Danielle, I'm going to jump in on there. I would completely agree. That was my experience as a gay Black young man. Nowhere, I would say my years there, I was free. It was never an issue. I was accepted and loved and could be weird and crazy as I wanted to be. And I was. And it was sort of all okay. And I think similarly, going off as a freshman in college, it was, in some ways, that would have been the shock. Academically, mathematically was never my thing. I went away as an architecture student and had to adjust to some things. But I was able, I think the Waldorf background, I was able to talk to my professors and teachers and connect and figure that stuff out. And that's where the thinking and the confidence in yourself like takes over, and you can make connections in a way that I think some other students were unable to.
If I may jump in here just for a moment, I'm not, Matthews, is that how you pronounce your name? I'm not sure how old your children are.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to go to Waldorf from kindergarten through the 7th grade. My parents got divorced. From Waldorf in 7th grade, I was foisted into public school. There was an adjustment period. I mean, this is years ago. I'm not sure of how Waldorf is now, but there was a sense of a protective bubble in Waldorf. We were all equal in the classroom, though. There was no, I mean, and my classmates from '85, we can attest to that. There was a multi-ethnical bridge. No one was less important. There wasn't any categorizations. The hardest adjustment that I personally found from Waldorf to the public school system was the creative aspects of that little bit of an adjustment of, we used to write on unlined paper and do beautiful drawings around, and in public school that was doodling. You know, I used to get, but that was the major thing. We didn't have marching band at Waldorf. There was no college, but you know, there wasn't that football team. We didn't have cheerleaders. But we had an appreciation for languages. We had an appreciation for the arts. We had an appreciation for nature. We had an appreciation for the world, for humanness, for being grounded in our truthful humanness and acceptance, basically. I mean, at least that's what I personally, and my family and my brothers, we all went to Waldorf. So I personally would encourage you, and I'm not a salesperson for Waldorf. I'm sorry I didn't graduate through the 12th grade in certain aspects, but I'm so glad that I had that base, because out in the real world, it really grounded me in nature and the love of the world. It really did. It really did. That's all I have to say about it.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Iona, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think that there's another question from Allison Huang, so I didn't want to take up, but I will just really quickly. I think Waldorf is a place that is about evolution. And so, you know, when I started, I'm the oldest of 3. I have 2 younger brothers. I've always been kind of I was a tomboy for sure, and been pretty aggressive and very confident. And there was an incident when I first started where my report card said something to the effect of like I was a bully or I laughed too loud. And the bully thing came because I raised my hand to answer every question. And my father sort of was like, what is that trying to say? And had a meeting with Mr. Rose, who was the headmaster at the time, and basically said, listen, you know, my daughter's here. We love this school. We think it's the right place for her. But looking at the older grades, it wasn't at that time the most diverse place. And he's like, you know, you're going to have to understand that language like that is coming from a place of maybe unconscious bias that this teacher doesn't seem to realize that she has. It was a very cordial conversation, but it was also one that my father, I mean, he would have had it whether the person was willing to listen or not, but Mr. Rose really took that message to heart, had a conversation, I believe, with not only that particular teacher, but with other faculty. And it's, you know, so as we're going through, you know, lots of diversity, equity, and inclusion statements from schools and things now, that I felt like we could have that conversation from that family incident that happened then, and the work to be more open-minded and to be reflective and look at the school and, you know, sort of things like that started then. And I just think that is true for issues like diversity. I think it's true for you know, looking at the curriculum. I haven't followed Waldorf, you know, very intensely over the years, but you know, having younger brothers that went there, and my youngest brother who's still very involved, and I, you know, read the newsletter. My sense is that constantly evolving and wanting to do better and willing to be self-reflective as a school community on all levels is something that guides the school and the striving to do better. In terms of the academics, I would say that, you know, if there was a challenge that I had was that because the expectation was that I could do anything and the bar was really high and you were expected to do really well. When I got to a very large college in New York City, I went to Barnard's, part of Columbia University. I felt a little bit like a, you know, small fish in a big pond and like, wait a second, how come everybody doesn't know I'm great? So that was a little bit of an adjustment, having to then sort of, you know, like everybody, reestablish yourself. And then I loved having so many activities, and in school there's a bit of an adjustment you have to make, I think at least I did, of not spreading yourself out too much. You know, I wanted to join every group, I wanted to be on several sports teams and be really into my academics, and I kind of had to learn kind of early that you know, college is a little bit is more work and you maybe can't do all of those things, and so that was, you know, there was no required art class, so that was a bummer, but yeah, I mean, you figure it out.
Thank you. I think we can maybe take one more 1 minute quick answer if there's another question. I don't see any blue hands, but I know I saw one before. Allison, are you still on? Do you have your question?
Yes, I actually didn't have a question. I was thinking to offer a perspective as a parent, but I feel like, you know, since everyone kind of covered a lot, I don't really have to put it out there.
Okay, you can if you want. We have about a minute, but if there are any other questions.
So I was just going to say about the diversity. I mean, we do have a truly diverse school in a way that counts, in the sense that there are a lot of places that are diverse. However, there's not a lot of interaction between different people. So it doesn't matter if your school is, you know, equally divided among, you know, various types of groups if they all hang out with only each other. And our school is small enough that everybody, you know, really gets to know each other and interact and understand different ways of being. And in terms of academics, having been at this school now for 16 years with 3 kids and 1 recent graduate, it seems to me that our high school is pretty rigorous. And the most recent comment, I think, from lots of recent graduates is college is actually kind of easy compared to Waldorf. That there is so much work, and deep work, not just, you know, lots of, you know, worksheets and quizzes, but thinking work, that when they get to college, it's really a pretty easy transition for a lot of kids.
Thanks, Allison. Okay, I don't see any more questions, but unfortunately, even if there were, we do have to switch over to our first breakout group. So I think at this time we can dismiss any parents that are on. The alums will get about a 2-minute break before your first breakout session will begin. Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are amazing. Thank you so much.
It's been great.